So now that we have our zones, let's also have a look at how to create bins. And so remember, zones are not mandatory. Bins are, of course, mandatory if you have enabled the bin mandatory field. For me, maybe bin is the most important storage unit in Business Central because it's on bins that you put away items and from bins that you pick items. So very important. So in this case, because we created zones, I will also start from a zone because then you can also see the added value. Business Central will copy these values to the bins that you create for a specific zone. So I will go to related, zone, and then bins. All right, so there we go. Now before creating bins, let me maybe add a few fields. I will go to personalize to simply show you that these fields are copied. And let's add a few fields. So I've added the following fields: the warehouse class code, the bin ranking, special equipment, maximum weight, maximum cubage, because you can use them for certain very interesting features that I will explain in a few moments. Let's start with the code. So that's something that you can choose yourself. Now in real life, this is quite often based on existing codes that are already used in the warehouse. So I will use ST001 in this example. Description is not mandatory, so I will leave this blank. And then, like I already explained, when you start from a zone, Business Central copies certain values that you entered for the zone to the bins that you create for that zone. The zone code itself, of course, but also the warehouse class and the bin ranking, as you can see. Bin type code, like I already mentioned, this is only used in advanced warehousing. Yeah, the bin is still empty. And then there's dedicated, which is used in manufacturing functionality. So we will skip this here in this demonstration. Then there's the warehouse class. Like I already explained, you can use a warehouse class to assign a condition to a bin so that Business Central searches for bins with that condition when, for example, an item should be put away with the same condition. So this means that you should also be able to enter the warehouse class for an item. So let me show you. First, I will start by going to items. And let's take the cleaning oil as an example, because that's an item that I will assign to a bin in one of the following units. All right, so here on the item card, I will scroll down to the warehouse fast step, and there you can see the warehouse class code. So here I can specify that this item should be stored on cold bins. All right, so warehouse class on the item, which means that for this item, Business Central will now look for bins with the same warehouse class. All right, so back to the bins, warehouse class cold. Then there's the bin ranking, which I already explained. So this is used to assign a priority to a bin. So the higher the ranking, the higher the priority. And this is also used in a bin replenishment function, which we will cover in the following module. Then there's special equipment, could also be interesting. So for certain bins, when they're, for example, high, you might need a forklift or other equipment. So let's create special equipment. So I will click on New, and let's just create a lift. So a warehouse lift, there we go. And because this bin is quite high, people in the warehouse need a lift. Now, special equipment is printed or is displayed on warehouse documents, so that people that work in the warehouse know in advance that they need a lift to pick an item from that bin, for example. Now, on the location card, you can specify based on what Business Central should look for special equipment. So let me show you. I will go to locations. And yeah, let's just open the north location. So here, if you scroll down to the bin policies, fast step, you can set the special equipment field. So you can specify that this should be according to the bin or according to the stock keeping unit item. So bin, for example, when a bin is quite high, like I just said, stock keeping unit item when an item is, for example, quite heavy. So this means that you should also be able to assign special equipment to stock keeping units and items. And that's indeed possible. Let me quickly show you an example. And in this case, let's go to the stock keeping units. All right, so I've created stock keeping units for my cleaning oil. And let's open the stock keeping unit for the north location. And there, if you scroll down on the warehouse fast tab, you can also specify that special equipment is required. Again, you can also assign it on the item card, also on the warehouse fast tab. All right. Okay, back to our bins. So special equipment. And then there is also maximum weight and maximum cubage. Now, this is also a very interesting feature. So let's start by entering maximum weight, 1000. Maximum cubage, I don't know, let's take 800. So Business Central will use this to check capacity. Now, first of all, you just enter a number. So you don't enter like a kilogram or whatever. So that's something that you agree internally. Like if we enter a weight, it's always in gram or kilogram, whatever. Now, again, back to the location card, because there you can specify how Business Central should check the capacity. So I will go to locations and I will open the north location. And again, I will scroll down to the bin policies fast tab. And there you have the bin capacity policy field. So there are three options. The first one is never check capacity. Then of course it doesn't make sense that you enter weight or cubage. You can specify that allow more than maximum more than the maximum capacity is allowed. So this means that Business Central will check the capacity, but if we are trying to put away more than the weight and the cubage, it will still allow us to post the put away. And then the third is prohibit more than maximum capacity. Then we can never exceed the maximum weight and maximum cubage, which means that if we are trying to put away more than the weight or the cubage, Business Central will give a blocking message. In my opinion, certainly when you start with using warehousing in Business Central, the second one is the most flexible one. You will still get the warning, but you can still post the put away or the item journal. And then still can make the necessary adjustments to, for example, these figures. Okay, so capacity, that's of course based on the capacity of an item. So Business Central should know how much an item weighs in order to compare it with the maximum weight or the dimensions of an item to compare it with the maximum cubage. So, and that's something that you need to set up on items, of course. So let me go to items. Yeah, and let's take the cleaning oil again. Now, where do we set up the weight or the dimensions of an item? Well, that's done on the item units of measure, because the weight is, of course, different when you have one unit of an item or a full pallet of an item. So I will go to related, then item, and then units of measure. So in here you can see the dimensions and the weight. So and for example, we have a can. So, and let's enter a weight, 1.2. And let's also enter an additional item unit of measure, for example, a pallet. And on a pallet we have, for example, 48 cans. And this means that a pallet 48 multiplied with 1.2 carries a weight of 57.6. You see, so this weight is then compared with the maximum weight on a certain bin, so that Business Central can give messages when we would exceed the weight. You can do the same for the cubage, by the way, so by entering cubage. All right. So could be very interesting so to use these capacity features in Business Central based on the maximum weight and maximum cubage. Let me quickly create a second one. So ST002. So I will keep the same settings, but I will give it a higher ranking. So if for some reasons within the same zone you want to use different rankings, that's, as you can see, perfectly possible. So for this one, we need a lift and it has the same capacity. All right. So I've created 2 bins for the staging zone. I will do the same for the other zones so that we have a few bins that we can use when posting warehouse transactions.